honor of Aleister Crowley's birthday, and considering that the Great Beast is quite a early, lack of a better word, guide for me, I thought I'd give a few minutes discussing Crowley's works and how they really inspired Luciferianism and my own magical path. Now, as a child, or when I've always had a drawing to the darkness and to the imagery of the adversary. But when you come across text and different books early on, years ago, everything was devil equals damnation, torture, murder, death, all those negative things. And this is surprising now, as I'm about to unleash a few different grimoires that really kind of exonerate the adversary as a balanced force of darkness and light. I find it interesting that with all the research that has been done and really tossing aside the Christian ideal as being worthless and no basis in reality, that people still choose to see the adversary in this way. Well, early on, I'd go into a bookstore when I was a kid, and walking in with my Slayer t-shirt, I would go and sometimes randomly ask the workers at this bookstore in Indianapolis if they had any Anton LaVey books. Now, you've got to understand, there was no internet, and mail order really wasn't an option when you're, like 12 and 13. I would get replies like, you don't want to go to Path of Evil and blah, blah, blah. Well, I'd walk over and I'd see the Aleister Crowley books. Now, taking those, I remember the Book of the Law. I read it cover to cover, except for the manuscript copy, of course, and the thing made absolutely no sense to me. Well, a year later, so I got Magic in Theory and Practice. Really made no sense to me, other than the basic description of magic. So, when I finally, I felt that Satanism was so much more, and magic was a vital part of that. I just didn't know how to really word it. And in my world, in my view, there is no black and white magic. It does not exist. I don't live that way. I don't view things that way. I see all the Christians of the world, majority of them, doing everything they despise according to their gospels, believing in things that have no basis in reality, and when there's research to show where these things came from. I would see all these things, I think about this, and to me, magic has to be a balanced effort, even if you're working in the darkest avenues. Even if necromancy or vampirism or whatever that is, there's a balance to that. So, getting Anton LaVey's works, going through those, I said, oh, well, I understand this. This is the basis. I want to move on from this. And I got into some different satanic writings at the time in the occult underground, and started applying them. And I really started to change my life for the better as a teenager, and who didn't really have any vital prospects. I wasn't really interested in so many things at that time other than my art, music, etc. And then there came a point corresponding with one of my mentors from the sinister tradition named Christos Beast, that he actually suggested go in and reread these sections in Aleister Crowley's works. And you've got to understand, the sinister tradition absolutely did not like Crowley's works. Well, I did. And I found Magic in Theory and Practice, Book 4, I looked at One Star in Sight and his descriptions of magic, and I said, absolutely, this is essential. But what if you can do it in a concept of the adversarial spirit? So what's that mean? The adversary as a destructive and creative force. Darkness equals subconscious, your inner desires, all those drives that LaVey talks about in basic formats. And then the light, or the angelic, which was the kind of developed will, the strength of character, discipline to shape and control those in your life. Well, I started practicing in that area within Thelema, and utilizing the structure that Crowley had from One Star in Sight. Not going through grades, I never joined the OTO. It just never took me there. But getting intellectual knowledge, so studying foundations of magic, religion, and then establishing a magical record, and practice, consistency. Those areas were very important to me. Moving to the astral plane. Basically, all of the structures laid out in adversarial light and loosely in Luciferian witchcraft. And to have this sense of, and using yoga as a means of illuminating or rising the Shakti or fire serpent. And when I was doing these things in the late 90s at this point, my whole world started to change. And this concept of the Luciferian spirit was number one to me. And my Damon, in contact with my Damon, recording Liber Al Veligus in a multi-layered ritual, that was my first ceremonial holy guardian angel working. And one thing that I would do is record and really chant and really focus, as you can hear in Liber Al, the Book of the Law recording. I would visualize all of those things while I was reciting them. Now, utilizing before and at different periods during the ritual, I'd use Ars Congressus cum Damon. And this, in tune with that, really opened my entire world up. I came across, later after that, Kenneth Grant. Now, Grant was very difficult for me in the fact that he was an artist, really, and used a lot of symbolism, which when you talk about the world of occultism, really doesn't mean much. Now, where it does mean something is when I started to apply my discipline and structure of Thelema in a Luciferian context, what I called Luciferian then, in with Kenneth Grant's deep Kabbalistic and numerical symbolism of Quranzan, Shugal, utilizing all of those, then all of a sudden, if you have Night Side of Eden, the Tunnels of the Qliphoth, a whole different world opened to me that was devoid of the concepts that Crowley damned, which were, quote, black magic. Well, black magic doesn't exist to me. If you're trying to curse someone and spend all your time doing that, you're just stupid. Live your life, excel, conquer your enemies, conquer your fears, and you are cursing by automatic design, by your Daemon, anyone who opposes you. So Crowley's balanced magic meant so much to me. But I had some lacking things I couldn't connect with Crowley. One was the dualistic concepts that he had, the good and evil type thing, the Black Brothers, all of he still had the Christian ingrained ideology. Now, considering he did so much to rip away from that and do something totally innovative with magic, innovative for his time, you can't blame him for his still Christian ideology that was in the subconscious. Now, see, Luciferian concepts, I do not accept good and evil in that sense, or light triumphing over darkness. They're a interlocked and interworking continual progression within the self. It's something that has to be. In Liber Samek, one of the most influential Aleister Crowley works, actually presents many Luciferian foundations, which I consistently, for a long period of time, worked with and adapted. Now, as I mentioned before, the Christian undercurrent that Crowley had, and by the way, it's not an insult to Aleister Crowley. I'm making this attempt to speak only about the things that I really find influential for myself, from my own experience. But the Christian undercurrent, when I talk about the duality, the contradiction, as he would call it, is not something that I adhere to. I'm fortunate enough to have totally divorced myself from the Christian duality. Anyone who reads my works, from Mask 'em Whole, Adversarial Light, Bible the Adversary, will glimpse that. But as I was mentioning, one of the concepts in Liber Samek is to exhaust yourself in the invocation of your angel. And Crowley mentions bringing it closer, drawing it closer by the vibration of magical voices. Now, the old Greek word, as I wrote in Goetia of Shadows, voices magicae, are vibrations that your brain, that as you're doing it, it can put you in a sense of trance. And it's a very powerful point of magic, because it's something that someone else will not necessarily understand. They'll think it's gibberish or some foreign language they've never heard, some ancient language, but it's activating the sacred and those things that are very intimate to you. That's why you see shadow tongue, and I always write, because it's very important, vibrate the hymns or invocations, even if it's English. Vibrate them to yourself and tone them with power. Even if you're whispering, feel yourself going through the motions. Visualize it. Use your imagination. The imagination is the key to the holy guardian angel, what I call the Damon. Crowley talks about attracting the angel by those vibrations. Now, the point in Thelema when the Damon becomes present is the instinct connectivity. You have this connectivity with your instinct that you've never had before. You know what to do in many situations. And you find that when you don't listen to your instincts and you go the easy route, which usually that's how this happens, then you have failure. And then you realize, I should have listened to my gut instinct. Gut instinct is a kind of connectivity, a kind of USB cable to the Daemon, in a sense, because you're having that communion. Now, the Daemon, Crowley had the holy guardian angel, and then Kabbalists talked about the evil genius. Well, the evil genius and the holy guardian angel are one and the same, because in Luciferianism there is no Judaic foundation structure like you have in Kabbalah. We go into the Qliphoth, but all of the Qliphothic demons and demonic forces are pre-Christian. They moved it into Kabbalah. All of the enemies, the various nations and the various gods and demons were all pre-Christian. So I don't pay any attention to the structure of that, because it's really about self-deification. And that's what I saw within Thelema, was self-deification without the ego and the, I'm better than you type thing. It's about continually challenging yourself, seeking your goals with a passion, following your true will. The Daemon will connect you to your true will, what your passion is in life, no matter what it is. You're going to go about magically differently, but Crowley was very pointed in a foundation and a structure, a foundation made of gold, as opposed to rotten boards. So you're not just doing curse magic, you're building your future. You're going through experiences, and he talks about beware of lust of result. Lust of result, like with Austin Osman Spare, is a very that's probably one of the main things that people in Thelema and Luciferianism fail to perceive in doing their workings, because they're wanting this to happen. I'm so, this guy pissed me off so much that I came to magic and I want to curse him. I want to destroy him because I feel powerless. Well, no, that's not what magic should be. It should not be that type of thing. You have to use your brain to get over, or sometimes your fists, to get over your enemy. And I would always advise, because this is, one thing I did when I was working in various companies in upper management is use your brain. And always work within the legal means of the law, because the real world, the world of Belial, is a reflection of the adversarial path. You have to know how to work the system and deal with people. So with that said, Crowley's concepts of most important thing, the Daemon, that's essential. Now, going into the Egyptian symbolism. Now, Charles Pace, who I'm about to release a book on, because one of the grandfathers of Luciferianism knew Aleister Crowley and was a good friend of Austin Osman Spare. But Pace was an expert, and expert in the Egyptian ancient religion. Also, the symbolism of color, and something that I've really thrown myself into that's really fueled and inspired the Luciferian ideology and magical system, which I'm presenting in honor of him as well. The big thing was destroying the good and evil concepts, a very big part. Now, one other person who fueled the Luciferian current, it's actually two people, because it was art and writings, was the Thelemite John Whiteside Parsons, Jack Parsons, and Cameron. John Whiteside Parsons, Jack Parsons, and his artist wife, Cameron, were very, very inspiring to me in that he took a different approach than Crowley to Thelema. Now, I didn't get into all of Parsons' works, because the whole fallible structure in Thelema for me is the use of the Godhead as Yahweh, or that deity in all of its seeming essence is degrading to the self. The Kabbalistic God is an insult, and has nothing to do with really a true Thelemite or a Luciferian, in that that's a jealous God. It's a tribal, small Hebraic God that wanted to kick all the other gods out by usurping different traditions and making him the hero of all of them. So using that concept as Godhead and merging into Godhead or light is where Luciferianism totally is gone from Thelema, because the great work is about fueling and illuminating and making powerful the Daemon, which Crowley would symbolize as Osiris, which is like the part that doesn't die in the person. When I make offerings to my Damon. It's not to the guy that has a drink, works out, works on a book, experiments with ritual structure, has family, likes certain things. It's not that person. It's not my ego fulfillment that I'm after, my workings. It is the fuel and the immortality of the psyche, the daemon, the instinct, the true will. And I'm very much driven in the Luciferian current in developing and expanding borders to where I have, like what the ancient Greek word pathos, which is the desire or longing. I'm continually going with it. Crowley had that in Thelema up until the day he died. Now, I think in his time to overcome what he did with the Christian concepts, he did a wonderful job. But Parsons went off and took the oath of the Antichrist. Now that's a very important part in Luciferianism, and it was the that exact working that I did. I took the one that he did and adapted it to my own life, and some specific likings that I have, but I use the same music, and totally did the recreation. I even had a Scarlet Woman at the time that assisted me in the operation, and I took the oath of the Antichrist. Now I have these a photo still that survived of me painted completely blood red on the top with the mark of the beast, beast in Babylon conjoined on my back. And taking that oath was very important for me because it was about destroying the pretense of Christianity, the lies and the hatred that it inspires, and the inspiration that it provides to killing the imagination, reason, logic, and man's potential, and woman's, of self-excellence. And that was right around 2000, 2001. But Parsons' work, if you look at his correspondence with Cameron, the Antichrist Working, very important for early inspiration with the Luciferian current. It's like, as I went through those, I was led. My Damon guided me to where I had to go, even though there were times, how do I work with Thelema, with Luciferianism as I see it, and Satanism, where do these fit? And what appeared to be a contradiction at the time, or the setback, if you will, was not. It was just all about knowledge and then using your imagination, and there's a natural correlation. You just have to reach out of Christian and go pre-Christian to understand Luciferianism. It's not within the playground of the Christian ideal. I'm not a reaction to Judeo-Christianity. I'm past that. I've seen it destroy so many people. You see it in the world today. It destroys the world. Crowley was seeing that with Thelema. And in many ways, Luciferianism is the successor of, I think, Thelema in some ways. And I'm not saying that Thelema is outdated or useless. Very useful, and certain people will find it very inspiring in their life and very meaningful. It all depends on your wiring. But in going through the symbolism of the wormwood star, the text, The Angel and the Sword, by Parsons, using these, you can use these things in ritual workings, actual recitals, and using like Kareza, or if you have a Scarlet Woman, or whatever, a Babylon rite, which I actually went through a couple times. These are all early fueling concepts of Luciferianism. Adversarial light, magic of the Nephilim, really, and I go through some things with Crowley and Thelema, and also Parsons, and how those structures can be used in a Luciferian way. The father of the Sabbatic cult, in a modern sense. So Sabbatic, Kenneth Grant. There's another author in the late 60s, Charles Pace, Austin Spare, and his work, The Four Flying Witches, essential to the Sabbatic cult. but more so than ever, Kenneth Grant, Aleister Crowley. Hecas esti bilobi, major concerning the dream projection. Remember, one of the early Thelemite training procedures, you'll find this in Luciferianism too, is projecting the astral body and developing that body of light. And early on we do body of light, body of darkness, so people can slowly start to get out of the duality. But we kind of, through the process, I've eased certain people through it to where it's a little more successful. And the thing with, Crowley being the complete creator of Wicca is, and I think he would, if he knew about it, his ashes would be very upset. In where they're at today, and his Damon would be viably probably perturbed that Wicca grew out of workings he did and writings, ritual structures he did for Gardner. And he is the establisher of the Sabbatic cult, not as I mentioned, The Oath of the Antichrist by John Parsons was very important to me, and it's something that I performed and created a structure for to end the pretense of Christianity, the dogma of Christianity. And my work, emerging from that, my true will, is to inherently reestablish and take out the mysticism of occultism, left-hand path, present the Luciferian ideology and magical practice as these kind of evolved, and I say this, with respect to other people's practices, but the evolved Satanism, because it unites traditional magic, the discipline of the will, with the carnal foundations of the subconscious and relating to the id, or the superego of Satanism, with the pre-Christian ideological foundations, and like the ancient Greek ruler cult. Luciferianism grows and emerges and blends and unites all of those to inherently destroy duality, to establish balance, and to show darkness as not being destructive, or even with approaching Luciferianism or Thelema with a Luciferian kind of structure, or Golden Dawn for that matter. Not looking at the adversary as the perverse, or all these so-called deviant acts that even Crowley writes about. That's not Luciferianism. That's not the adversary. Those acts come from someone who has not structured their leviathanic, or the coiling serpent, the subconscious, and channeled with the true will those desires to where they're not a degradation to the self. And that's not telling someone how to live. Going further with the sacred magic of Abramelin, something that any Thelemite who's serious into magic will look into. The book, other than the structure of the infernal legions or infernal kingdom, which is useful for the imagination and ritual workings, the book is mostly garbage. But I can tell you that taking that and using your imagination with it, just like Crowley did with Thelema, once your Damon is illuminated and inspired, you can do anything. One of the things that Crowley writes about in an Equinox article called The Sorcerer was that ceremonial magic, as a means of attainment, has in common with all other methods, Western or Eastern, the supreme object in view, identification with the Godhead. Now, Luciferians don't blend into a Godhead. We don't identify with a Godhead. We illuminate the Daemon and build that spirit through our workings, through our discipline, through our will. That, for us, is Godhead. And upon physical death, the idea, the theory, is the Daemon is immortal. The Daemon survives in a different realm of existence that's not the human body. Won't have the memories necessarily. It's not per se a ghost. I seem to connect that with the Egyptian concepts of Kaaba and all of those. But Crowley goes on to explain that no matter if the aspirant be a theist or atheist, pantheist or autotheist, Christian or Jew, the goal is reaching that light. Now that light for us is Luciferians is like in Mascom Hole, Malamu, or the black flame, the Daemon. Very important there. And that if you don't have that goal in performing ceremonial magic, then you're going to, like Crowley as he explains it, be like a ship without an idea where you're going. You're going to just float aimlessly. Your workings will mean nothing. So, those people who are thinking now, I want to conjure a demon because I want to see it, I want to experience it, then you are going to fail until you learn, till you wake up to applying that in your life now. Go and have an adventure, do whatever you do. You will find the path of magic is just in that, the interaction with the world around you. Crowley was very big on that. A successful mountain climber, traveled all over the world. He followed his will, sometimes to the detriment of his physical body. In Thelema, in the sorcery, he writes about become the changeless one, that ye shall leap past 1,000,000 years. That's like saying, okay, that if you look at a cult statue, like, say, Horus, as in Thelema, that idea of Horus is the god of the great sky, the mastering hawk, the overmastering power of his enemies, associated with Set as well. Timeless, because he doesn't have personality. He has the will, the pathos, the representations of nature mixed with his physical, or what we imagine as physical attributes. That is a concept. So I'm actually working on something that really is kind of a salute to Crowley in the sense that it's all about the Daemon and fleshing out and having composite images of what your Daemon appears to be, looks like to you in your imagination, and then making incense offerings to it to achieve your continual magical process and goals. But Thelema in itself is a successful and a very useful structure. And something I continue to have admiration for even now. Crowley was ahead of his time. He was a chaos magician without shifting paradigms. He had a structure and a will. And Luciferianism differs from chaos magic in that sense that we utilize different cultural techniques for magical and sorcerous practice. However, like in Thelema, there is a will and a design. We're not shifting our ideas, adopting ideas. And as Crowley invoked, deific mask, as I call them, our gods, identifying and being devoted, is simply utilizing and understanding the process of nature and the human subconscious, the direct will, the Daemon, and using that to shape and acquire knowledge, experience, power, and going forward towards your continual goal, which is always going to evolve. So I'd like to say, with that Crowley's structures are, and as well as successor Kenneth Grant, are all very important to the Luciferian current and are in some ways compatible, as you'll see with a upcoming book I have based on my earlier workings and continued workings with the Tunnels of Set. So thank you, and